The fragile edifice of trust, meticulously constructed over years of shared life, can crumble into dust in a single devastating moment. This is not a distant, cautionary tale. It is the raw, unflinching reality that redefined my existence. My name is David Alexander Evans, though most know me simply as David. My heritage, deeply rooted in the rugged resilience of Scottish and Irish ancestors, instilled in me an unyielding determination, a sharp intellect, and an unwavering moral compass. I possess an absolute zero-tolerance policy for pretense, foolishness, or anything less than direct honesty. Were my forebears able to speak from the mists of time, they would undoubtedly recount the indomitable spirit of the Scots, a tenacity still visible in their persistent struggle for independence. My late father, a man of profound wisdom and exacting standards, harbored an absolute disdain for intellectual laziness. Though he passed many years ago, his vital lessons remain etched into my very core, guiding my every decision. And now, I find myself grappling with a predicament that challenges every principle I hold dear. A mere handful of months ago, an unsettling, insidious truth began to surface. Victoria, my wife of nearly a decade, had been engaged in a clandestine world of multiple romantic liaisons for the better part of 4 years. It appears that at some inexplicable juncture, I simply ceased to be enough for her. I am not one to wallow in the debilitating luxury of self-pity, nor am I one to shy away from uncomfortable truths. Instead, I embarked on a relentless pursuit of the unvarnished facts, and I found them. My initial step was to retain the services of a highly discreet private investigator, a necessary expenditure of $2,500. That sum, though significant, was a small price for clarity. He meticulously confirmed her regular, clandestine meetings with a man named Marcus Thorne. Their illicit rendezvous spanned various locations: anonymous hotel rooms, vacant properties Victoria was actively listing for sale, and even his compact apartment situated in the bustling heart of Capital City. We reside in Maplewood Heights, a charming, upscale district within the Empire State's capital. Next, I sought counsel from trusted friend, Sarah Jenkins, a seasoned attorney whose invaluable advice came at no cost. Her assessment was brutally frank. If I initiated divorce proceedings, I would be financially ruined. We are parents to 2 wonderful children, Liam, who is 7, and Olivia, 5. In the Empire State, custody almost invariably defaults to the mother, a stark reality regardless of her fidelity or lack thereof. Fathers, it seems, are largely an afterthought in the eyes of the law. Unless the mother is a convicted felon with a record of severe criminal acts, the court's sympathies almost universally lie with her. It matters little if the father is demonstrably the more engaged or capable parent. The entire system, I realized with chilling clarity, is inherently rigged against men. Let me be unequivocally clear. I harbor immense respect for truly devoted mothers. However, I believe good fathers deserve precisely the same rights, the same recognition. These are my children, undeniably mine. So why, I pondered, am I automatically considered less qualified, less capable? According to the prevailing legal framework, I am, by default, just another potential deadbeat dad. Sarah's expert, albeit grim, advice was unequivocal: do absolutely nothing. She explained that any attempt to challenge my wife's blatant infidelity would only result in my utter financial and emotional decimation by the legal system. The law, she emphasized, effectively permits her to cheat with impunity and still strip me of everything. The concepts of fairness, of true justice, seem to hold little sway within the family courts of the Empire State. A searing wave of frustration boiled within me. My wife was not only permitted to betray me, but also poised to emerge from the wreckage in a position of distinct advantage. My own lawyer, in a moment of cynical candor, even suggested that if I couldn't fight back, I might as well engage in similar behavior. The only caveat: ensure I was never caught. For if Victoria ever acquired proof of my infidelity, my already precarious situation would become exponentially worse. The absurdity of it all was almost paralyzing. So where did that leave me? Trapped, utterly, irrevocably stuck. I left Sarah's office that day, retreated to the confines of my own study, and stewed in a profound misery. How had this unfathomable situation come to pass? What had I done so catastrophically wrong? Why had she inflicted this profound wound upon me? The reality crashed down upon me with the force of a relentless tidal wave. I was drowning in the catastrophic collapse of my marriage, a structure I had believed unshakable. My wife had used me, a mere means to an end, and then discarded our sacred vows as if they possessed no meaning whatsoever. Her fleeting pleasure, it seemed, mattered infinitely more than the sanctity of our family unit. Was I overreacting? Should I simply take a strategic step back, analyze the chessboard, and plan my next move? I desperately needed a coherent strategy, a roadmap through this emotional minefield. But in that moment of raw despair, I had none. That night, I returned to our house, donning the elaborate facade of the loving, unsuspecting husband and father. I made a conscious, difficult decision. I would not let on that I knew. I would perform the role of a man whose world remained intact, smiling, laughing, pretending that everything was perfectly normal. And then, with a cold, calculated resolve, I would do precisely what she was doing. If such behavior was acceptable for her, then it was, by grim necessity, acceptable for me. Quid pro quo. I apologize if my thoughts ramble somewhat, if my narrative seems disjointed, but this burden has been gnawing at my very soul for far too long, and I need to purge it. A week after the shattering discovery about the true state of my marriage, I reluctantly sought out a psychologist. Instead of offering any genuinely helpful insights or practical coping mechanisms, he promptly delved into my childhood, probing whether I harbored any long-standing resentments towards my father. I swiftly dismissed the entire therapy session as utterly useless, resolving instead to sort through the chaotic maelstrom of my thoughts by the simple act of writing them down. Months later, after a protracted period of intense, soul-searching, and agonizing introspection, I arrived at a definitive decision. I needed something, a personal indulgence, something to counterbalance the profound injustice of my untenable situation. That's when I found myself, almost by accident, falling into a no-strings-attached arrangement with a coworker. Evelyn Hayes, a fellow attorney at my firm, is a year my senior, tall, impeccably fit, and undeniably stunning. She's divorced with 2 children attending elementary school, and for reasons I still struggle to fully comprehend, she chose to engage in a physical relationship with me when she could, by all accounts, have her pick of countless other men. Not that I consider myself unattractive. I stand 6 feet tall, maintain a fit physique, and genuinely take care of myself. Yet, in my estimation, she was undeniably out of my league. Through casual, meandering conversations, I learned that Evelyn had long since abandoned any idealistic notions of finding true happiness within the confines of marriage. She and her ex-husband, Daniel, had genuinely tried to salvage their relationship, but ultimately, they both conceded that they were simply not right for each other. The truly astonishing revelation, the one that stopped me cold, was that her children weren't even biologically Daniel's. That particular disclosure, naturally spelled the definitive end of their marriage. And frankly, I completely understood why. If I ever discovered that my own children weren't biologically mine, I would be utterly devastated, my world shattered. Just to be absolutely certain, a silent, nagging doubt having surfaced, I discreetly arranged for my own DNA test. Evelyn and I found a surprising solace in each other's company. There was no pressure, no demanding emotional attachment, just two individuals fulfilling a mutual, unspoken need. I genuinely enjoyed our time together, both the intense physical intimacy and the stimulating, unguarded conversations. Perhaps my wife's affair was rooted in something similar, merely a means of escape, a fleeting distraction from deeper discontent. But unlike Victoria, I had a meticulously planned exit strategy. If she ever ceased her involvement with her lover, I would, without hesitation, terminate my arrangement with Evelyn as well. That, however, was clearly not on the horizon. Regular updates from my private investigator consistently confirmed Victoria's weekly rendezvous with Marcus. This grim reality meant I needed to undergo regular STD screenings purely as a precaution. Thankfully, my results consistently came back clean. Perhaps Victoria insisted her lover use protection, or perhaps he wasn't a walking health hazard. Either way, I adopted the habit of getting tested every 3 months just to be absolutely safe. Evelyn and I, of course, always use protection. Better safe than sorry. Now, a little essential context. My wife, Victoria Thorne Sinclair, prefers to use her maiden name professionally. She believes Thorne Sinclair sounds far more prestigious, more distinctive than Evans, which, ironically, is practically American royalty given its widespread prevalence. She firmly believes that her maiden name grants her a competitive edge in the highly exclusive, high-end real estate market. We are both 34 years old and reside in Maplewood Heights, an affluent neighborhood within Capital City, conveniently situated near the university and the state capitol building. Our home is an elegant, 3-story queen and Victorian, an architectural gem beautifully updated and meticulously maintained over the years. It's sufficiently large that we could easily go an entire day without ever crossing paths, a fact that had, until recently, felt like a luxury. On the surface, we projected the image of a picture-perfect life, thriving careers, beautiful children, and an enviable sense of stability. Or at least, that's what I genuinely believed. Clearly, I was profoundly mistaken. Looking back, with the clarity of hindsight, the subtle signs had always been there. Victoria was meticulous in covering her tracks, a master of deception. She would return home after spending hours with her lover, acting as if nothing out of the ordinary had transpired. We would prepare dinner together, engage in what seemed like normal conversations about our respective days, and make plans for the weekend, just like any other seemingly contented couple. It was all so routine, perhaps even too routine. Perhaps that, in itself, was part of the problem. Then, one day, I found her second phone. I wasn't actively snooping. I simply needed her car keys to move her vehicle, and there it was, nestled discreetly within her handbag. It was turned off. I instinctively switched it on, only to find it locked with a 6-digit passcode. I tried a few logical guesses, birth dates, anniversaries, but after the 4th failed attempt, a warning message flickered onto the screen. I didn't want her to know I had discovered it, so I powered it down and carefully returned it to its place. But that insidious phone, that small, innocuous device, haunted me. Why would she possibly need a second phone? Every conceivable answer pointed, relentlessly, to something deeply hidden, something nefarious. I spent days, weeks, even meticulously overanalyzing every facet of our marriage, our life together, our ingrained routines. I desperately searched for another plausible explanation, any alternative that didn't confirm my spiraling fears. There was none. Instead of directly confronting her, a move that would undoubtedly lead to denial and obfuscation, I opted for incontrovertible proof. I reactivated the private investigator. And when the devastating truth finally returned, confirmed by irrefutable evidence, it solidified my very worst fears. Victoria yearned for something more, something I was clearly failing to provide. Most people, when seeking a fresh thrill or a renewed sense of excitement, might take up a new hobby, embark on exotic travels, or immerse themselves in community initiatives. Not my wife. Her chosen solution was to seek solace, or perhaps thrill, in the arms of another man. I struggled profoundly to make any coherent sense of it. The lawyer in me, trained to dissect facts and arguments, desperately wanted to approach the situation rationally, to keep emotions rigidly compartmentalized. But my children, Liam and Olivia, complicated that cold equation immeasurably. If I confronted Victoria directly and demanded she cease her infidelity, what if she defiantly refused? What if she actively sought a divorce, deliberately escalating it into a brutal, acrimonious custody battle? No one, save for our respective lawyers who would gleefully rake in $300 an hour, would emerge victorious as we squabbled over trivial furniture and contentious parenting schedules. If a separation was, in fact, an inevitable outcome, it absolutely had to be handled with extreme care, without blowing up our entire lives and irrevocably damaging the children. That left me with my lawyer's chillingly pragmatic advice: do nothing. I sat with that agonizing counsel for weeks, endlessly overanalyzing every minute detail. Had I, in some way, neglected Victoria? Had our marriage truly lost its essential spark, its vibrant connection? Had I become boring, predictable, or far worse, inadequate in bed? My self-doubt spiraled downwards, threatening to engulf me entirely. Yet, rather than drown in its corrosive depths, I resolved to take decisive action, even if its precise form remained elusive. I began by focusing intensely on myself. The immense stress I was under paradoxically propelled me towards a more rigorous fitness regimen. I significantly increased my running mileage, hitting the winding trails at precisely 5 in the morning, watching the dawn break. Within 2 months, I shed 8 pounds and 2 inches from my waistline. I also commenced weightlifting at the gym, conveniently located near my office, gradually building strength and definition under the expert guidance of a personal trainer. If I had, indeed, become unattractive to Victoria, I was determined to rectify that. I also made a concerted effort to rekindle our relationship, to breathe new life into its dying embers. I planned romantic dinners, offered massages with warm, fragrant oils, and meticulously arranged candlelit evenings designed to evoke intimacy. None of it worked. Every earnest attempt was invariably ruined by the incessant buzzing of her accursed phone, constantly vibrating with what she claimed were urgent work notifications. When I tried, gently, to suggest turning it off, she immediately complained that she might miss an important client call. At some point, the exhaustion of her indifference became too much, and I simply stopped trying. Instead, I slipped, almost imperceptibly, into my own secret life. Victoria had Marcus. I had Evelyn. What had initially begun as a desperate means to reclaim some semblance of control over my fractured life gradually evolved into a routine of its own. Evelyn and I kept things remarkably simple. No strings, just a mutual, unspoken need. We shared intense physical encounters, largely free from the emotional weight or complex demands of a traditional relationship. Still, I respected and cared for her in my own way. She was and is a truly remarkable person, an amazing mother, but we both understood that our arrangement had a distinct expiration date. Or so I thought. 6 months later, very little had fundamentally changed. Victoria continued her weekly rendezvous with Marcus, as meticulously documented by my investigators' reports. This meant there was no compelling reason for me to terminate my arrangement with Evelyn. In fact, imperceptibly, over time, we grew closer. We even introduced our children to each other, blurring lines I had initially sworn I would never cross. Then, one evening over dinner, Victoria casually mentioned she would be heading to Silver Sand City for a week-long real estate convention. The event, she insisted, was supposedly focused on industry updates and invaluable networking opportunities, but I knew better. These conventions were, in reality, thinly disguised party weeks held at opulent resorts, an endless cycle of potent cocktails, late mornings, and utterly meaningless PowerPoint presentations before another night of uninhibited indulgence. We had initially discussed taking the children to Enchanted Kingdom Park during their spring break, but that cherished plan had mysteriously vanished when her convenient convention suddenly appeared. It was at that precise moment that I decided it was time to change the game entirely. If Victoria was so cavalierly risking our marriage, perhaps it was time she genuinely understood just how much she stood to lose. I couldn't, nor did I try to, conceal the surge of frustration. I thought we explicitly agreed to take the kids to Enchanted Kingdom Park this year. My expression made it unequivocally clear that I was utterly infuriated. Victoria's casual choice of a Silver Sand City trip over our planned family vacation simply did not sit well with me. "This convention is truly important, David," she sighed dramatically, rolling her eyes with exasperated condescension. "Besides, Olivia is still far too small for some of the rides, and you know how she gets when she can't do everything Liam does. We can handle Olivia." I counter, my voice firm. "She's remarkably smart. She understands safety protocols. What I don't understand, Victoria, is why a real estate convention matters more than your family." She let out another theatrical sigh. "The company has already booked my flight and hotel. I don't want to argue about this, David. I'm going." That abrupt declaration decisively ended the conversation. The atmosphere in the house remained palpably tense for the remainder of the night. After tucking the children into bed, I stood beneath a searing hot shower, desperately trying to clear the chaotic maelstrom in my mind. I didn't sleep much that night, but during those restless hours, an idea began to form, a plan that felt like a potent distillation of justice. A few days later, I tentatively ran it by Evelyn. Instead of moping, "Why don't we take our kids to Enchanted Kingdom Park together?" We meticulously planned it out, booking flights and a resort, and by the time Victoria departed for Silver Sand City, I was already packing bags. The children were absolutely ecstatic, their faces alight with unadulterated joy. I instructed them to keep it a thrilling secret from their mother, and they eagerly, conspiratorially, agreed. The morning after Victoria jetted off to poolside cocktails and flirtatious networking, Evelyn and I boarded a direct flight to Sunshine Coast with 4 excitedly chattering children in tow. This was uncharted territory for us. Until this moment, Evelyn and I had maintained a relationship that was purely physical, transactional in its core. But our kids had met once before, purely by chance, and had surprisingly gotten along remarkably well. Now, we were playing at being a family, a complex, intriguing charade. Over dinners and during quiet downtime, Evelyn began to open up more about her past. She candidly admitted her mistakes in her previous marriage, but conveyed a fierce determination to be a truly great mother. I, in turn, share my profound frustration over Victoria's affair, and she listened with rapt attention, her sharp lawyer's brain analyzing my every word, every nuance. "David," she said one night, her voice soft but firm, "your marriage is effectively an open one. You just haven't consciously admitted it to each other. Are you truly certain this is how you want to live your life?" I sighed, the weight of the question heavy on my shoulders. I haven't confronted her yet because I don't want to irrevocably destroy my kids' lives. I refuse to become a part-time dad who only sees them on weekends. Divorce, Evelyn, hurts children the most. I can't risk that. Not yet. I also knew, with a certain resignation, that Evelyn wasn't predisposed to long-term monogamy. Her past history suggested she would eventually move on, perhaps find another casual relationship. But for now, we were here in this strange, beautiful bubble. And, strangely, it felt undeniably right. 4 or 5 glorious days, we experienced Enchanted Kingdom Park like any genuinely happy family. Exhilarating rides, vibrant parades, and joyous poolside fun. I had booked adjoining resort rooms, one for Evelyn and me, another with comfortable bunk beds for the children. The days were filled with the magical wonder of theme park adventures, the nights with quiet drinks and whispered conversations that, inevitably, always led to more. By the time we flew home, the children were utterly exhausted but beaming with happiness. I returned to my demanding work schedule. Evelyn returned to hers. Victoria returned from Silver Sand City, deeply tanned, nursing a visible hangover, a faint whiff of stale alcohol still clinging to her clothes. She barely had time to drop her luggage before Liam and Olivia, bubbling with uncontainable excitement, breathlessly recounted every detail of their thrilling trip to Enchanted Kingdom Park. Her expression darkened, a thundercloud gathering on her face as she slowly turned to me. "What the hell, David? We were supposed to go together. Why would you take them without me?" I shrugged, feigning indifference. "We planned this trip, remember? You chose Silver Sand City instead. I wasn't about to let the kids down because of your priorities." She opened her mouth to argue, a retort forming on her lips, but I preempted her. "You had your 6 days of indulgence in Silver Sand City. We had 5 amazing, unforgettable days in Sunshine Coast. We both made our choices." Then, before she could utter another word, I turned and calmly walked out of the room, leaving her standing amidst her bags and fading resentment. Too bad. Work kept me exceptionally busy, and 2 full weeks passed before I saw Evelyn again. I wondered if the family trip to Enchanted Kingdom Park had been too much for her, if she was now discreetly looking for an exit. But that wasn't the case at all. She texted frequently, enthusiastically recounting how much she and her children had loved the trip, how much joy it had brought them. When we finally met, something subtle yet profound had shifted between us. She was more openly affectionate, softer in her gestures. In bed, she desired more than just passionate release. She ran her fingers tenderly through my hair, whispered sweet, intimate names, and held on to me a little longer after the intensity had subsided. What had been purely physical was undeniably turning into something deeper, something far more meaningful. Victoria, on the other hand, hadn't changed in the slightest. My investigator consistently confirmed her continued, regular meetings with Marcus. At home, our lives rigidly adhered to a sterile routine. Occasional Saturday night intimacy, though she frequently found increasingly elaborate excuses to avoid it. Late nights at the office, feeling too tired, or having other plans. I continued to play the role of the patient, understanding husband, but I was rapidly running out of the emotional energy to care, to even pretend. 8 months later, life took an utterly unexpected turn. 7 months prior, Victoria had nonchalantly informed me that she was pregnant. Given the alarmingly scarce intimacy we had shared in the preceding months, I was almost entirely certain the baby wasn't mine. Still, I decided to wait for a definitive DNA test once the child was born. Empire state law automatically presumes the husband to be the legal father, which meant I would be held financially and legally responsible unless I could conclusively prove otherwise. My lawyer, Sarah, made it unequivocally clear a DNA test was priority number one, an absolute imperative. Victoria was still working, though her hours gradually decreased as her pregnancy progressed, and she was still, according to my investigator, seeing Marcus. If the DNA test confirmed my suspicions, I hoped he had sufficient space for her and their child in his cramped apartment. Victoria's internal monologue. I screwed up monumentally. I'm almost positive I conceived this baby during that week in Silver Sand City. There was a guy, Harrison Blackwood, someone I'd met before, someone I'd always found incredibly attractive but never acted on until this year. Fueled by too much alcohol and a string of spectacularly bad decisions, I slept with him for 3 consecutive days. And to compound the disaster, I had stupidly forgotten to refill my birth control prescription the month before. I naively thought it would take months, maybe even years, to get pregnant again. Turns out I was spectacularly wrong. When this baby finally arrives, it'll be painfully obvious David isn't the father. What then? He'll undoubtedly leave me. I know him well enough to predict that. He'll probably throw me out of the house. And perhaps, truly, I deserve it. But we are a family. I have rights. And I will fight for my children, Liam and Olivia, if I have to. If I can somehow convince David to stay, to accept and raise this baby as his own, maybe, just maybe, we can move past this. Do I tell him now, or do I wait, clinging to a fading hope? I bought myself a few days, a precious sliver of time. I deliberately avoided physical closeness after returning from Silver Sand City, blaming it on exhaustion. When we finally did resume intimacy, I meticulously ensured he finished inside me, just in case a desperate, irrational gamble. God, this baby won't stop kicking. I need to use the restroom. Evelyn's internal monologue. My first marriage to Daniel taught me a brutally hard lesson. Just when you believe you've achieved some semblance of victory, you've often already lost everything. His new wife, Scarlett, waited patiently, quietly, for me to self-destruct, to implode under the weight of my own poor choices. And when I inevitably did, she gracefully stepped in and claimed my place. Now she possesses everything I carelessly threw away: a loving husband, a complete family, a beautiful home, even a new life overseas. I absolutely will not make that catastrophic mistake again. Victoria was, plainly, letting her impulses systematically destroy her marriage. I used to be like that, impulsive, reckless, but I grew up. I learned. Now, I was ready for something real, something enduring, something permanent. And David was precisely the kind of man worth waiting for. Loyal, profoundly devoted to his children, incredibly strong, a man of integrity. Perhaps it was his deep Scottish-Irish roots. Whatever it was, I clearly saw what Victoria was so carelessly discarding, and I was willing to wait for the inevitable moment she burned it all down. Enchanted Kingdom Park was the indisputable turning point. Being with David and our combined children made me realize, with searing clarity, that I wanted more, so much more. I didn't need to force anything. I just needed to wait patiently to subtly show him how I truly felt and to simply be there when he was finally ready to accept it. Even my children had started innocently asking if David would become their new dad. How much clearer could the universe possibly make it? Victoria called my office, her voice frantic, stating her water had broken. I rushed home, instinctively grabbed the pre-packed hospital bag, made swift arrangements for Liam and Olivia, and drove her to the hospital. Labor was far faster than anticipated. Within a few short hours, the baby arrived, a girl. But the real shock, the profound surprise, wasn't her gender. The doctor handed the newborn to the attending nurses, then glanced at me, a silent, expectant look on his face, as if waiting for my reaction. When the nurse gently placed the baby in Victoria's arms, her expression conveyed everything. She looked at the tiny infant, then at me. My face remained a blank mask, my lips pressed into a tight, unyielding line. The truth, stark and undeniable, was laid bare before us. Victoria gasped audibly, a choke sound. Her deeply guarded secret was out, irrevocably exposed. I turned and walked out of the room, ignoring her desperate, whispered calls. At the nurse's station, I calmly filled out the birth certificate. When I reached the section for the father's name, without a moment's hesitation, I wrote unknown. The nurse paused, her gaze flickering up to meet mine, a silent question in her eyes. I gave a resolute, silent nod and walked out of the hospital, leaving behind the shattered remnants of my marriage. 2 days later, Victoria returned home with the baby, driven by her friend, Chloe. Chloe offered no questions, no judgments, merely a single, eloquent look that communicated good luck navigating this monumental mess. I consciously avoided Victoria for most of the afternoon. When Liam and Olivia were due home from school, she finally found me in my study, her voice tentative. "So, what exactly do we tell them?" she asked, her eyes wide with a desperate plea. I exhaled slowly, a long, weary breath. "Tell them whatever you want to tell them." What I knew, with absolute certainty, was that this baby was not mine, and I possessed irrefutable proof. Earlier, I had quietly visited one of Victoria's coworkers, the one who had accompanied her to Silver Sand City. After some careful persuasion, she had reluctantly divulged the name of the man Victoria had spent the majority of her time with. Armed with that crucial piece of information, I placed a call to Harrison Blackwood, a Bayview real estate agent and former professional football player who had briefly warmed the bench. He feigned ignorance when I initially asked if he knew Victoria, claiming he wasn't even at the Silver Sand City convention. When I calmly informed him that Victoria would soon be contacting him regarding their daughter, and that I would be filing for a court-ordered DNA test, there was nothing but stunned, prolonged silence on the other end of the line. Before hanging up, I casually, almost pleasantly, asked him to verify his home address for legal paperwork. Of course. That's when the line went abruptly dead. You see, Harrison Blackwood has a wife and 3 children, and quite possibly more scattered across the country. So, to summarize the unfolding catastrophe, my wife cheated, got pregnant, and bore a biracial baby. My children, Liam and Olivia, are naturally puzzled by the newborn's appearance, but they are innocent enough not to question it yet. Soon, however, I will have to find the right words to explain this bewildering new reality. And as for Victoria, our shared future, what little remained of it, looked undeniably bleak. Victoria's internal monologue continued. I made an utter mess of things, a truly spectacular mess. I desperately need to talk to David, to make him see reason, to appeal to his inherently level-headed nature. He's always been so rational, so calm. In time, he'll surely come around. He'll accept this baby, Clara, as his own. I considered calling Harrison to tell him it was a girl, that he had a daughter. But when I told him months ago that I was pregnant, he had summarily shut me down, told me to leave him alone, even threatening legal action if I ever contacted him again. Funny, he certainly had plenty to say in Silver Sand City while he was in bed with me. Since Clara was born, David barely acknowledges my existence. He acts perfectly normal with Liam and Olivia, engaging with them, loving them, but he absolutely refuses to touch Clara. If she cries, he simply stares, waiting for me to handle it. He's moved out of our bedroom, relocated his belongings upstairs to the guest room, and now spends his evenings closeted in his office. The crib remains in our room, where I sleep alone, surrounded by the echoes of a life I squandered. But I know David. Eventually, he'll cool off, the anger will subside, and he'll want to talk. And when that happens, he'll also want closeness again. I'll get back in shape, hit the gym with a vengeance, and remind him what he's missing, what he threw away. Meanwhile, he spends more and more time outside with the kids, hiking, going on little outings to parks and museums. They come home bubbling with excitement, eager to tell me about their adventures. And me? I'm stuck here all day, every day, taking care of a baby David won't even look at. I desperately need a shower, a moment of reprieve. Evelyn's internal monologue continued. Marriage taught me a profoundly hard lesson with Daniel. Just when you think you've won, you've already irrevocably lost. Scarlett, Daniel's new wife, patiently waited for me to self-destruct. And when I did, she gracefully stepped in. Now, she has the life I carelessly threw away. A good husband, a complete family, a beautiful home, even one in a different country. I absolutely wouldn't make that mistake again. Victoria had systematically ruined her marriage, and I knew it was only a matter of time before David walked away for good. This time I played it smart. I stayed close, kept my focus squarely on one man, David. He was a good father, a loyal husband, and he had been betrayed for years, subjected to a cruel, protracted deception. I recognized the insidious signs of infidelity because I had made those very same mistakes myself years ago. I wouldn't repeat them. At work, I visited David's office more frequently, met him for lunch regularly, ensured my presence was a comforting, consistent one. People at the firm noticed. Everyone knew about Victoria's blatant affair and the baby that was demonstrably not his. The whispers grew louder, a collective anticipation of the inevitable divorce. Every time David left the office for a personal meeting, glances were exchanged, a silent question hanging in the air. Was today the day? He always texted me before heading to see his lawyer. I waited patiently, with a quiet confidence. The end of Victoria's reign and her rightful reckoning was coming. For days, I relentlessly posed the same agonizing question to myself. What in the hell do you do with a wife who has borne another man's baby? Every raw, primal instinct screamed at me to pack her belongings, load them into a truck, and summarily throw her out. That action, I admit, would have been immensely satisfying, a cathartic release of pent-up rage. But Liam and Olivia would have questions, difficult, piercing questions, and I wasn't ready to confront them with such a brutal, definitive answer yet. I wasn't a heartless bastard, though in those moments of incandescent fury, I truly wanted to be. Victoria's own father, a man I respected, had pulled me aside, his voice filled with a weary disappointment, and quietly told me to do whatever I thought was right. Even he, her own flesh and blood, couldn't fathom how utterly reckless she had been. I knew, with a heavy certainty, what I had to do. I just wasn't sure I was emotionally ready to face it, to execute it. Yet, my parents, who lived nearby, were eagerly awaiting the chance to meet their new grandchild. But when they stepped into the nursery, their initial excitement evaporated, replaced by a stunned, horrified silence. My mother gasped, visibly staggering back into the nearest armchair, her hand flying to her mouth. My father simply stared, his face a mask of disbelief, then turned and walked out of the room. Moments later, I found him at the dining table, methodically pouring himself a stiff drink. He didn't look up when I entered the room, Clara nestled innocently in my arms. My mother sat beside him, silent, her eyes vacant. My father slid her a glass, and she took a heavy, fortifying sip. Then, both of them slowly turned their gazes to me. I decided to be honest, at least partially. I had a one-night stand in Silver Sand City. I admitted, my voice barely a whisper. My father muttered a bitter, cynical comment. Not everything that happens in Silver Sand City stays in Silver Sand City, does it? My mother, ever direct, cut straight to the point. What happens now, Victoria? I exhaled a ragged breath. I don't know. Are you leaving, David? She pressed, her voice sharp with apprehension. No, I answered quickly, perhaps too quickly. Is he kicking you out? I shook my head slowly. We barely speak to each other. He spends as much time with Liam and Olivia as humanly possible away from the house. He's moved into the spare room upstairs. That's why Clara's crib is in our bedroom, in my room, where I sleep alone. Silence descended once more, heavy and suffocating. Finally, my mother sighed, a profound, weary sound. Jesus, Victoria, how could you be so incredibly stupid? She wasn't asking a question. She was stating an undeniable, painful fact. I sat there, utterly unable to argue, defeated. Clara nursed contentedly, blissfully oblivious to the profound chaos her unexpected birth had wrought upon our shattered family. The truth was, David hadn't made a decisive move yet. But how long, I wondered, could that agonizing limbo last? Every time he looked at this innocent child, he would be starkly reminded of my profound betrayal. How could I possibly expect him to stay, to accept this, to forgive? This wasn't some long, drawn-out affair with Harrison Blackwood, a deep, emotional connection that could be rationalized. It was a reckless, impulsive mistake, fueled by excessive alcohol and a series of monumentally bad decisions. Harrison had been charming, smooth-talking, and incredibly well-connected within the industry. He possessed an almost uncanny ability to make women feel special, showering them with lavish attention and eloquent compliments. That night in Silver Sand City, I had far too much to drink, and before I fully comprehended the gravity of my actions, I was in his luxurious hotel room. One night, one lapse inexplicably morphed into 4. For those few illicit days, my myriad responsibilities faded into a blissful, ephemeral background. No work stress, no demanding husband, no endlessly needy children, just the intoxicating thrill of being desired, of being utterly consumed by pleasure. Harrison was confident, experienced, and, to be brutally honest, well-equipped in other ways. I surrendered completely, immersing myself in every moment without a single second thought for the life that patiently awaited my return home. But as the conference drew to an end, reality crashed down on me with the brutal force of a tidal wave. By the time I boarded my flight home, my body ached, my head throbbed with a searing hangover, and the insidious tendrils of guilt began to creep into every corner of my mind. I desperately needed to pull myself together to reassemble the shattered pieces of my composure before facing David and the children. When I walked through the door, Liam and Olivia ran up to me, their faces beaming with unadulterated excitement. "Mom, we just got back from Enchanted Kingdom Park." I froze, my mind struggling to process their words. Enchanted Kingdom Park? That was supposed to be a family trip, a shared experience. David and I had explicitly discussed taking the children together. Now he had done it without me, a silent, pointed act of defiance. I turned to him, my confusion evident. I thought Enchanted Kingdom Park was something we were going to do as a family. He barely glanced at me, his gaze distant. "You have to actually be around for that," he said, his voice devoid of emotion, before turning and walking away. I was too profoundly hungover to fully process the crushing weight of his words in that instant. but I felt them hit me with the force of a physical blow to the gut. I couldn't shake the rapidly intensifying, sinking feeling that I had made a massive, unforgivable mistake. No amount of showering could scrub away the corrosive guilt or erase the undeniable fact that I had spent 4 straight days in another man's bed. I had gone too far this time, far beyond any point of return. For a while, I desperately tried to push it to the very back of my mind, convincing myself, with a fragile optimism, that David and I could somehow fix things. The distance between us had been growing for a while, a subtle chasm that widened with each passing day. Maybe he already suspected something, perhaps even about Marcus. Either way, I knew I had to act swiftly, decisively. I tried to reconnect, to bridge the ever-widening gap. I initiated closeness with David as soon as I could, hoping that renewed intimacy, a shared vulnerability, would help heal the growing rift between us. Maybe if I made a concerted effort, truly tried, we could move forward. But then, a few weeks later, I missed my period. My body felt subtly different. My breasts were tender, swollen. My stomach churned in the mornings, and I recognized the familiar, unmistakable signs. I already knew, with a cold certainty, before I even bothered to take a test. I was pregnant again. Panic, raw and debilitating, set in immediately. I should have ended the secret, before anyone knew, before it became this undeniable reality. But I didn't. Instead, I clung to a desperate, irrational hope. Please, God, let this baby be David's. But deep down, in the core of my being, I already knew the brutal truth. The question that relentlessly hammered at my brain was simple yet brutally direct. What the hell do you do when your wife has another man's baby, a child that is not yours? Every rational thought, every legal precedent I knew, told me that divorce was the only conceivable answer. How could I possibly raise a child that wasn't mine? And not just any child, but a child whose very existence would serve as irrefutable, living proof of my wife's profound betrayal. I had initially, mistakenly, thought Marcus might be the father. But no, Victoria had somehow managed to cheat on her own side affair, an irony that was not lost on me, a new layer of astonishing deception. And before anyone leaps to conclusions, let me be clear, this wasn't about race. The undeniable fact that the baby was biracial had absolutely nothing to do with why I was furious, why my world had imploded. This was about my wife having another man's child while we were still legally married, while I believed we were still a family. I was not about to be played for a fool, to be a cuckold in my own home. I had already, quietly, ordered a definitive DNA test. When my lawyer, Sarah Jenkins, inquired if I had definitive confirmation, I handed her the unassailable results. Along with them, I meticulously slid over all the evidence my investigator had diligently gathered, damning pictures, detailed timelines, irrefutable proof tying Victoria directly to Harrison Blackwood. Then we delved into the complex legal labyrinth. Empire State family law, as I had come to learn, wasn't exactly favorable towards fathers in custody battles, but I was not going down without an all-out, no-holds-barred fight. My sole, overriding priority was my children, Liam and Olivia. I wanted, unequivocally, full custody, and I was prepared to go to war in court to obtain it. I had financial stability firmly on my side. I could easily afford to pursue this vigorously in court, hire a dedicated nanny for after-school care, and provide everything my children needed without any financial contribution from Victoria. There was, Sarah assured me, legal precedent that supported fathers gaining custody in cases like mine, instances of profound marital infidelity and deception. Keeping the house, our family home, was also a paramount priority. It was the only home Liam and Olivia had ever known, and maintaining stability, continuity for them was absolutely crucial for their well-being. I was willing to pay Victoria half its appraised value to buy out her share, but I wanted her gone from our lives. As for child support for Clara, I honestly didn't care about it. I didn't need her money. I just needed her out of our lives, out of our home. Sarah suggested a separation agreement as the initial strategic step to begin the arduous process. It was a formal legal step before divorce, a structured way for couples to live apart while theoretically deciding if reconciliation was still possible. But let's be brutally realistic. Very few people ever reconcile after signing such an agreement. To me, it felt utterly pointless, a mere delay tactic. An agreement was simply postponing the inevitable. Why wait? Why needlessly drag this out? I was done. Sarah, however, believed that a separation agreement was the best first step. It would grant us crucial time to see if the baby's biological father, Harrison, would take responsibility and provide financial support. More importantly, it would allow me to gradually establish a life without Victoria physically present in the house, just me and the kids, while keeping things as stable and minimally disruptive as possible for Liam and Olivia. I wasn't setting out to maliciously punish Victoria by cutting her entirely out of their lives. She could have full visitation rights, but she would have to handle her own child, Clara, entirely on her own time, on her own terms. That, I knew, would be a daunting new challenge for her. Actually parenting a newborn all weekend, every other week, with absolutely no one to hand the baby off to when she tired. The truth was, she had barely been present in our children's lives for the past 2 years. Between her demanding job and the significant time she spent with Marcus, she had mentally checked out of our marriage long before I ever confirmed her infidelity. She came home late, exhausted, perpetually distracted, either grabbing a quick bite, answering incessant emails, or heading right back out to meet another client. Some weeks, she barely saw the kids at all. Over time, I had naturally taken on the vast majority of the parenting responsibilities, and the kids had seamlessly adjusted. They became more independent. Their bond with me grew exponentially stronger, and life, surprisingly, went on. Since Clara's birth, Victoria and I had hardly exchanged more than a few clipped words. I had absolutely no involvement in Clara's care. That was solely her responsibility, not mine. But after a month of deliberate avoidance, I knew it was time. Friday night, I sat at the dining table, a manila envelope resting squarely in front of me, waiting for Victoria to walk in. When she did, I kept my voice steady, devoid of any discernible emotion. "Victoria, we need to talk." She froze mid-step. I watched the color drain from her face, leaving it ashen. She knew. She had been desperately hoping that if we simply ignored the issue long enough, if we avoided the elephant in the room, I would eventually just accept what had happened. Pretend the baby was mine. Move on. That wasn't going to happen. I poured her a glass of wine and calmly pushed it across the table. I had a glass of ice water for myself. She eyed the ominous envelope before finally raising her gaze to meet mine. "What's in there, David?" I didn't waste precious time. "This is a separation agreement. My lawyer prepared it, and I think it's time we figure out the future. Our marriage is irreparably broken. You clearly don't want me as your husband, and right now, I unequivocally don't want you as my wife. So, we need to legally separate and reassess where we stand." Victoria's hands trembled visibly as she took a long, shaky sip of wine. Her eyes were wide, searching my face for something, anything, anger, regret, hesitation. I gave her nothing, a complete blank. I continued, my voice unwavering. "The agreement states that Liam and Olivia will live with me here in the house. You and your baby, Clara, will move out. You'll have ample time to find a suitable place, and you can take whatever furniture you need from the house. You'll have full access to the children, Liam and Olivia, but I've already arranged for a part-time nanny to help with childcare after school. I've also adjusted my work schedule so I can be home more. Everything is already meticulously set in place. She looked like a deer caught in blinding headlights, utterly bewildered. She had clearly convinced herself that I wouldn't actually take action, that I would simply capitulate. "Why do you want me and the baby to move out?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. I scoffed, a dry, humorless sound. Was she truly asking me that? "Come on, Victoria. Are you serious? You slept with another man. You got pregnant with his child. And you honestly thought I'd just roll over, pretend this was normal, that I'd raise another man's child under my roof? You've been cheating for years, Victoria, and now it's finally over. You have 30 days to pack your things, find a place, and move out." I was holding back a flood of raw, scorching emotions that I desperately wanted to unleash. Unbridled rage, the profound ache of betrayal, utter disgust. But what good would that serve? I needed to maintain absolute control for the children's sake. Losing my temper wouldn't fix anything. It would only create more chaos. I pushed the manila envelope across the table towards her. "I've been fair in this. You absolutely should get your own lawyer to review it. I actively encourage it, in fact. But understand this, Victoria, I am not and will never acknowledge that child as mine. Ever." Then I stood up and calmly walked away, leaving her alone in the chilling silence of the dining room. For the next month, I painstakingly tried to keep things as normal as humanly possible for Liam and Olivia. Victoria began apartment hunting and eventually found a suitable two-bedroom place conveniently located near her office. She would have sufficient time to settle in before her maternity leave officially ended. I periodically reminded her that the move-out date was rapidly approaching, a gentle but firm nudge. She walked through the house, meticulously choosing what furniture she wanted to take, while I mentally noted the changes I'd make once she was gone, already envisioning a new, calmer space. I also, without ceremony, took down every single family photograph that featured her prominently. Through it all, I kept my personal life strictly private. I continued seeing Evelyn, but I never once mentioned her to Victoria, nor was I sure if Victoria even suspected we were involved. Evelyn and I saw each other a few times a week, and on weekends, we would take our children out together, to the park, to local attractions, anywhere that allowed me to momentarily escape the profound mess at home. Evelyn was patient, understanding, but she had her own questions. "What happens after the 6-month separation period, David?" I didn't sugarcoat it. "There won't be a reconciliation. Victoria barely speaks to me now unless it's directly about Liam or Olivia. My plan is to file for divorce as soon as this separation agreement period concludes. My mother, living far away, couldn't have cared less about what I did or how I proceeded. But Victoria's family, they still clung to a desperate, fragile hope. They wanted me to forgive her, to accept her child, to raise Clara as my own. That, I knew, was simply not going to happen. Respect was everything. Without it, there could be no marriage, no meaningful relationship, no fundamental trust. Evelyn watched me carefully, observing my internal struggles, knowing I was still working through the profound trauma of it all. She understood that I was hurting, that I needed time, but my priority was crystal clear. I had to create a stable, loving home for my children, no matter the personal cost, and that's precisely what I was going to do. 6 months have passed since I moved into this apartment. It's not terrible, I suppose. David made sure I had what I needed to make it livable, to at least function. He let me take our bedroom set, most of the kitchenware, and even the dining table and chairs. But when the moving trucks were packed and I looked around the empty, echoing house one last time, it truly hit me, a punch to the gut. I would never live there again. This, I realized with brutal clarity, was the true price of my stupidity, my utter selfishness. It had cost me my family, my beautiful home, and the life I'd always believed I would have. I used to genuinely believe I could have casual flings, indulge distractions, as long as David never found out. What harm, I rationalized, could it possibly do? I convinced myself that I could keep my marriage intact, could have the security of a husband and home, while indulging in illicit pleasures on the side. And then I got pregnant. Now I'm stuck in a two-bedroom apartment, juggling the crushing demands of single motherhood with absolutely no time for a social life, for anything beyond mere survival. I haven't had intimacy in months, years it feels like. I'm heading back to work next week, which means debilitating daycare expenses I can barely afford. My family has subtly distanced themselves, their disappointment palpable. The few times I stopped by my office during maternity leave, people barely looked at me, their gazes sliding away. I haven't lost the baby weight as quickly as I wanted, and money is tighter than I ever imagined. The leased Lumina is gone, replaced by a used Comet. David, of course, still drives as Forester, the same stable, reliable, unwavering man he's always been. Soon, I expect the divorce papers to arrive. Our separation agreement ends in 2 weeks, and David has given me absolutely no indication, no shred of hope that he wants to reconcile. I tried to bring it up when he dropped Liam and Olivia off last weekend, but he just looked at me, his eyes devoid of emotion, then turned and walked away. I finally understand what he meant about respect. I just realized it far, far too late. It's time. David is finally, unequivocally, free from Victoria, and I'm not wasting another precious moment. He's fully settled into his new role as a single father, handling everything with that same structured, capable, almost military precision he applies to every aspect of his life. He balances work, the immense responsibility of the house, and the demanding schedules of the children without ever seeming overwhelmed, without even breaking a sweat. His social life, what little there is beyond work, has been almost exclusively with me and my children, and I'm perfectly content with that. We've been spending more and more time together, naturally, organically, evolving into something that feels undeniably like a real, cohesive family unit. The kids and I stay over at his house on weekends now. It feels so easy, so natural, like it was always meant to be this way, like we simply slid into the places we were always meant to occupy. Looking back, I still deeply regret how I ruined my first marriage. Daniel was a good man, a truly good man, and I let my profound selfishness destroy what could have been a solid, loving family. I foolishly convinced myself I could have the best of both worlds: a stable husband, financial security, and the exhilarating excitement of multiple affairs on the side. Then the inevitable happened. I got pregnant, not once but twice, by another man. When Daniel finally confronted me, his face etched with pain, I shut down completely. I refused to talk, refused to admit the truth, to even acknowledge his suffering, and he, understandably, walked away. He told me, quietly, that he would wait until I was ready to be honest, truly honest with myself. But I never called him. Shame, deep and corrosive, held me back. By the time I finally found the courage to face my mistakes, to accept my flaws, he had moved on, built a new life. He was married to a wonderful woman who gave him the unwavering loyalty I never did. I absolutely will not repeat that catastrophic mistake. David is the man I want, the man I deserve. And now, he's finally free to be mine, truly mine. But there is one small, incredibly significant problem. So here I am, officially divorced, a single father, a corporate lawyer specializing in the admittedly boring but highly lucrative fields of business and tax law. I dedicate as much time as humanly possible to my children, Liam and Olivia, even working from home a few days a week so I could be there for school pickups, prepare dinner, and assist with homework. My entire schedule is meticulously structured around their needs, their routines. I make sure we spend ample time outdoors, hiking challenging trails, exploring new places, creating cherished memories that will last a lifetime. Victoria has been seeing less and less of the children. Between her demanding work schedule and the immense challenges of raising a newborn alone, she barely makes time for them anymore. I've gently reminded her that Liam and Olivia miss her, but with her packed calendar and seemingly endless weekend open houses, she keeps drifting further and further away, a distant echo in their lives. I can't control that, and so I make sure our home life is full, vibrant, and overflowing with love. Evelyn and her children are around constantly, and to anyone on the outside looking in, we probably resemble one large, happy, blended family. Then, everything changed again in a way I never anticipated. The signs were, in hindsight, impossible to ignore. This morning, my usual cup of steaming coffee made me gag, a sudden, nauseating lurch. Before I fully comprehended what was happening, I was hunched over the toilet, my stomach twisting in agonizing knots. Oh crap! I splashed cold water on my face, desperately trying to shake off the wave of nausea, then got Liam and Olivia ready for school as if nothing was wrong, as if my world wasn't subtly shifting beneath my feet. But I knew, with a sickening certainty, something was profoundly wrong. My breasts felt swollen, tender to the touch. My period was late, though, honestly, I hadn't paid much attention to its regularity before now. On the way to work, I stopped at the pharmacy and, with a discreet glance around, grabbed a pregnancy test. As I tucked it almost furtively into my briefcase, a wave of profound panic hit me. Crap. Damn it. No, not now. I forced myself to focus at work, to immerse myself in spreadsheets and legal briefs, but my mind kept racing, a relentless hamster wheel of worry. By the time I got home and finally managed to put Liam and Olivia to bed, I knew I couldn't delay it any longer. I took the test into my bathroom, locked the door. Why? I didn't know. It was en suite. No one else was even in the house. But somehow, closing that door, locking it, made the moment feel more real, more consequential. I took a deep breath, exhaled slowly, trying to calm my racing heart, then did what needed to be done. The test sat on the counter, a small, silent arbiter of my future, while I mindlessly washed my hands, then my face. I couldn't just stand there, staring, waiting for the results to appear, for my fate to be revealed. I had to move, had to do something, anything. I went downstairs, pacing aimlessly around the kitchen, my thoughts a jumbled mess. This changes everything. If the test was positive, this was the pivotal turning point for David and me. This would be the moment that definitively determined whether we truly had a shared future together, a path forward, or whether I had just, inadvertently, created a whole new, utterly unforeseen complication. Finally, with a monumental effort, I forced myself back upstairs. My hands trembled perceptibly as I picked up the little plastic stick. I looked down, and my heart stopped dead in my chest. Unbelievable. I had spent weeks, seemingly endless weeks, desperately trying to figure out how to approach David, how to get him to talk to me again, to even acknowledge my presence. He wouldn't return my calls unless they were directly about Liam or Olivia. And even then, his responses were clipped, impersonal, professional. I knew, deep down, that he was utterly done with me, that he had closed that door forever, but I still clung to a sliver of irrational hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, I could pull him back, could reignite the dying embers of what we once had. Marcus, my regular lover, had moved on months ago, vanished from my life. Last I heard, he was dating some college senior. Good for him, I suppose, but she should be careful, very careful. I learned the hard way what kind of man he truly was. Between Clara, a demanding newborn, and my relentless work schedule, my life was a constant blur of sheer exhaustion. I didn't possess the energy or the inclination for a social life, and I certainly wasn't about to start club hopping with my coworkers. The very idea of hooking up with a stranger held no appeal whatsoever. Who knew if I'd end up with a decent guy or a complete psychopath? So I thought, why not David? Despite everything, despite all the betrayal and pain, I still loved him. He was the father of two of my children, my beautiful Liam and Olivia, and I believe that deep down, beneath all the hurt and anger, he still harbored feelings for me, too. Maybe if I played my cards right, if I was strategic, I could subtly remind him of what we once had, what we had built together. I planned it meticulously. I needed a neutral setting, somewhere without Clara, somewhere we could genuinely talk, truly communicate. There was a restaurant downtown, the Craft Ale House. The name didn't quite do it justice. It was stylish, yet relaxed, with a menu full of David's favorites and an endless, impressive selection of craft beers. He always liked it there, always found comfort in its atmosphere, so I called him. To my profound surprise, he agreed to meet. It was the first real conversation we'd had since Clara was born, and I knew I had to handle this with the utmost delicacy, with every fiber of my being. I wasn't giving up. The divorce papers might be finalized, irrevocably signed, but in my mind, in my desperate heart, there was still a chance, a glimmer of hope. As long as we shared Liam and Olivia, there was still something, some invisible thread, tying us together. And honestly, I still desperately needed him, needed his stability, his presence. I debated whether to meet with Victoria at all. Part of me, the pragmatic, wounded part, thought, why bother? What's the point? But another part, the part that still prioritized the well-being of Liam and Olivia above all else, told me that perhaps there was something truly important she needed to convey, something that couldn't be relegated to a phone call or relayed through a lawyer. Maybe this was a rare chance for us to have a genuine, adult conversation, a final, civil exchange. So, I agreed to meet her at the Craft Ale House, but I wasn't going alone. When I arrived at the restaurant, I spotted Victoria immediately, but my gaze quickly shifted. She wasn't alone. A beautiful blonde woman sat across from me, her fingers loosely intertwined with mine. She was stunning, elegant, but understated, the kind of natural beauty that didn't require flashy outfits or heavy makeup to shine. Victoria saw me approaching, and instead of looking awkward or caught off guard, I simply smiled, a genuine, calm smile, as if I'd been fully expecting this moment, this tableau. My stomach dropped as I watched her process the scene. As I reached the table, Evelyn gracefully moved from across from me to settle beside me, her hand resting lightly on my arm. I stood, introducing her casually. Evelyn. Victoria could barely hear me. I realized her eyes wide with shock. She was too consumed with processing the fact that I had brought someone else, someone new, someone undeniably present. Evelyn remained quiet, her composure unruffled, but her expression was sharp, perceptive. She didn't need to say anything. Her eyes were assessing Victoria, watching, waiting, like a hawk circling its prey, poised for the inevitable. Victoria, in that moment, had already lost, long before the first word was spoken. I ordered Victoria a drink, then took the liberty of ordering food for everyone. It wasn't lost on her, I knew exactly what Evelyn liked, her preferred dish, her favorite drink. That small, intimate detail, that subtle sign of a shared life, cut deeper than I expected. Once the drinks were delivered, I got straight to the point, cutting through the awkward silence. So, Victoria, what did you want to talk about? She scrambled, her mind clearly racing, to piece together anything that sounded reasonable, a plausible excuse for this unexpected meeting. She stumbled through a flimsy excuse about the children, talking vaguely about plans for the next few months, trying to regain some semblance of control. I nodded, barely reacting, then casually mentioned that I was planning a special trip with Liam and Olivia for Christmas to a ski resort in Green Peaks. Victoria mechanically agreed to everything I suggested, her attention clearly unable to focus on anything except the woman sitting calmly beside me, the woman who was now a definitive part of my life. Then, with a deliberate, almost imperceptible movement, Evelyn removed her sweater. I watched Victoria's eyes widen, her breath seemingly catching in her throat. Evelyn's baby bump, though not yet enormous, was unmistakable, a clear, undeniable testament to a new life, a new beginning. I allowed Victoria a silent moment to process that profound revelation before delivering the final, definitive blow. I wanted to let you know that I'm selling the house. You'll get your share, of course, once the mortgage is settled and the sale is complete. Evelyn and I are moving in together, and we're buying a place that better suits our needs, a home for our growing family. Silence. A heavy, absolute silence descended upon the table. Then, with an almost triumphant, yet controlled grin, I added, Evelyn is pregnant. The baby is due in 5 months. That was it. The final, resounding nail in the coffin of our shattered marriage. Any last shred of hope Victoria had desperately clung to was utterly, irrevocably gone. She sat there, numb, her mind reeling, thinking back to every single choice that had led her to this agonizing moment. Marcus, the myriad affairs, those 4 reckless days in Silver Sand City with Harrison Blackwood. It had all been leading, inevitably, to this crushing crescendo. She had, with her own hands, systematically destroyed her marriage, her family, her entire life. She wanted the earth to open up and swallow her whole, to erase her from existence. Instead, she merely nodded a barely perceptible movement, muttered, "I have to go," her voice barely a whisper, and walked out of the restaurant, leaving her drink untouched. She was so profoundly disoriented that she forgot she had driven there. She took a cab home, leaving her car behind, just another mistake to add to the burgeoning list. 1 year later, I suppose I get the very last word, the final perspective. Life has changed so incredibly much in just a single year. David and I built something together, something profoundly strong, undeniably real, and beautifully enduring. We bought a new home not far from his old house, but larger, with more space for all of our children. Before moving in, we added a sparkling pool, and now it's the vibrant center of our family life during the long summer months, filled with laughter and splashes. Between David, our newborn daughter Clara, and 4 energetic, lively children, my days are admittedly utterly exhausting. Managing the house, my demanding work schedule, and the constant, joyful chaos of motherhood leaves me completely drained by nightfall. But I always make time for David. Yes, we're married now. David insisted on it. He wanted our children to have parents who were fully, unequivocally committed to each other, bound by a sacred promise. So, just before Clara was born, we quietly tied the knot, a small, intimate ceremony filled with deep meaning. We sleep without clothes, which, joyfully, means we make love almost every single night. At this rate, I wouldn't be surprised if I were pregnant again soon, adding another beautiful soul to our vibrant family. We still employ a wonderful nanny for invaluable help during work hours, and she watches the children after school. It gives us a little breathing room, a precious moment of quiet, a chance to reconnect. But ultimately, David and I handle everything, every challenge, every joy together. I've learned my lesson profoundly. I will never take this remarkable man for granted. I was reckless, tragically so, in my first marriage, treating Daniel as if he were disposable, easily replaceable. I let selfishness and a misguided sense of entitlement blind me to the true treasure I possessed. By the time I finally realized my catastrophic mistake, it was irrevocably too late. I won't let that happen again, not with David. He is everything I could have ever wanted in a husband. A devoted father, a steady, reliable man who gives his all unstintingly to the people he loves most. I love him more than I ever thought possible, a love that deepens with each passing day. 3 years ago, I could never have possibly imagined my life would turn out this way, but I wouldn't change a single solitary thing. 2 years later, life has a wonderfully unpredictable way of reshaping itself, of presenting second chances when all hope seems lost. 2 years ago, I genuinely believed I had lost everything. My marriage was utterly shattered, my trust annihilated beyond repair, and I stood at the precipice of profound uncertainty, unsure of what path lay ahead. Now, I wake up every single morning to a home overflowing with the sounds of laughter, warmth, and genuine happiness. My children, Liam and Olivia, are thriving, flourishing, happier than I ever could have hoped for. Evelyn and I built a life together, a life that is truly our own, one filled with unwavering stability, boundless love, and profound mutual respect. She gave me something I never thought I'd experience again: peace. Our daughter, Clara, just turned 1. She is my light, my second chance at fatherhood, untainted by the shadow of betrayal that loomed over me before. She looks undeniably like Evelyn, but she possesses my stubbornness, a trait we both laugh about good-naturedly when she adamantly refuses to eat her vegetables. The house feels whole, complete, a sanctuary. Victoria, on the other hand, has gracefully faded into the background of our lives. After our divorce was finalized, she kept up appearances for a while, making sure she saw Liam and Olivia on weekends, playing the role of a devoted mother. But over time, her presence dwindled, her visits became less frequent. Work became her undeniable escape, her refuge, and soon her weekends with the children transformed into occasional dinners. Then, those dinners morphed into mere phone calls. Now, it has been 3 months since she has seen them in person, 3 long months of absence. I don't shield Liam and Olivia from the truth. I answer their questions honestly, openly, but without any bitterness or resentment. The damage, I understand, was entirely her own doing, her own choices. I won't let her absence define my children, nor will I allow it to cast a shadow over their lives. They have a home filled with love, consistency, and absolute stability. They have Evelyn, who has stepped up in ways Victoria never could, embracing them as her own. And most importantly, they have me, unwavering and present. Regret is a slow, insidious poison. It seeps into every fiber of your being, lingering in every quiet, reflective moment, relentlessly reminding you of every single choice, every misstep that led you to where you are now, trapped in a life you never envisioned. I thought I had time. I thought somehow David would come around, that he'd eventually remember what we once had, the life we built, and that at the very least we could coexist, find a way to make it work for the children. But when Evelyn stepped into the picture, truly stepped in, I lost everything. Not because she stole him from me. No, I lost him long before that, through my own actions. I just never truly believed he'd be strong enough, resolute enough, to simply walk away. Now I live in a smaller home, alone with my daughter, Clara. She's beautiful, a precious piece of me, but every time I look at her, I'm reminded of what I lost, what I threw away so carelessly. The family I once had, the life I squandered. I see David at school events, at Liam's soccer games, at Olivia's dance recitals. He's always there, always present, always steady, a constant, unwavering presence. I stand at a distance, watching him with Evelyn, watching the life I used to have, now firmly in someone else's hands, a vivid, painful reminder of my mistakes. I wonder, desperately, if there's ever a way to fix what I so comprehensively broke. Then I see the way David looks at Evelyn, the profound love in his eyes, and I know the answer. There isn't. There never will be. David was never meant to be temporary. From the very moment we started this unexpected journey, I knew he was different, set apart. He was the kind of man you build an entire future with, the kind of father who places his children above everything else, who dedicates his life to their well-being. And now, unequivocally, he is mine. We were married last year in a small, intimate ceremony, surrounded only by our closest family and dearest friends. The children were an integral, cherished part of everything. Liam stood proudly beside David as his best man. Olivia, radiating joy, walked down the aisle tossing flower petals with graceful abandon. And our sweet Clara sat contentedly in my arms as I said my vows, a symbol of our new, complete family. It was never about grand gestures or elaborate displays. It was about us, about the quiet, profound love that blossomed from the ashes of past mistakes. And now, we have everything we need, everything we could ever wish for. Victoria still lingers in the background of our lives, a faint shadow rather than a tangible presence. The children have largely stopped asking when she's coming to visit. When she does call, they answer politely, dutifully. But there's a distinct distance now, a chasm she created herself, and one she will, eventually, have to mend on her own. As for me, I finally have the life I always wanted, the life I unknowingly yearned for, a man who loves me fiercely, a home filled with genuine laughter and profound joy, a future that feels incredibly secure and bright. And most of all, a family that will never, ever fall apart.